Yeah, there we go. Maybe I should say. Yeah.
Oh, I have to stay seated.
Oh, you can see it.
Oh, right, okay. Very good. Okay, well, this will be a seated introduction then. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the deep dive session on leadership. So hopefully you're in the right room and you're here for the right session. So we'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. We are grateful for the opportunity to live, work, and play on these beautiful lands. So thank you for being here today. My name is Christina Casse, and I'm with the City of Vancouver. Oh, of course. We are excited to have you be a part of the Women Deliver satellite sessions. It's a special 4-day event focused entirely on gender equity. It's filled with thought-provoking discussions, workshops, and more. And it's hosted by the City of Vancouver and put on with the generous support of the Vancouver Public Library. So just a quick housekeeping item. If anyone does need to use the restrooms, they are just outside the door and to your left. All right. And before I call our host up to begin things, I just wanted to invite you all after this session to visit our exhibition on the 8th floor of the library. It's titled Women Deliver Cities. And the display documents the work of about 24 local women artists for whom the built environment is both their subject matter and their field of action. So if you have time, please be sure to check it out. So I wanted to introduce Virginia Weiler, and I had her bio already, and she just snatched it out of my hand. So Virginia Weiler is your host. Please come on up. Thank you.
I snatched it out of her hand because we have 1 hour. And I thought, and we've got a whole bunch of time we want to spend with Jessie Adcock and Paulette Senior. So I'll just give you the 30-second version. I'm mostly from around here, worked in microfinance for many years, ran microloan funds in British Columbia, worked in Africa for a number of years, was involved in Van City for many, many years at a board level. And now I work with my husband in a family business. It's customs brokerage and freight forwarding. So if you ever need to bring goods from another country into Canada, give us a call. So it's been just really excited to be invited to participate in this. Keeping things on time is not my strong suit. So I'm going to be looking over at the clock and maybe looking at my phone. But we're going to spend about 20 minutes with these two fabulous leaders. I've been told that the purpose of the session is to be able to go a bit deeper. So a whole bunch of time on bio, but they'll tell you about who they are. So I'm going to start with Paulette. And Paulette, just hang on to your socks for a moment. I'm going to say, Paulette immigrated here from Jamaica, I think as a child. Probably grew up somewhere in Ontario. She's had just a profound life of leadership. She's run housing and employment programs all over the Greater Toronto area. She was the CEO of YWCA Canada. She may have been the leader of YWCA Ontario before that, but she
fired my previous boss.
and now she's CEO of an organization called the Canada Women's Foundation. She has got an incredible list of awards that she's won over the years, just recognizing her leadership. Let's see if I can name a couple of them here. The African Canadian Achievement Award, the Afro Global Leadership Award, Black Women's Civic Engagement Award, the Micro Skills Margaret Franson Leadership Award, and the Women of Influence citation. So let's assume she's got to keep things tough. And thank you for coming all the way from TO for this talk. So maybe you could start by telling me, just in your life, is your life and your career kind of different than you expected? Did you have kind of a strong vision or plan for what you wanted to do in life, or has it been more of an unexpected journey with some surprises?
Wow, that's a great question. That allows me to go a little bit deeper because I haven't planned my answers.
Perfect.
I would say that I really followed my passion, right? And I came across my passion for community and community building, community development, and to support primarily girls and young women and young people, probably because of my own experience. So I came to Canada to join my parents in 1973. I was 11 years old at the time, and it was a bit of a cultural shock for me in terms of being able to get my footing, and it took me several years. And I experienced some good things and some not so good things, really trying to get acculturated to this new environment. And I came from a community where I was very much surrounded by love and support and discipline, and knew everyone around me, and everyone around me who were in any positions of power or privilege looked like me. Mm-hmm. And then I came to Canada where that really shifted significantly, and where the expectations of me weren't very high. In fact, I think I was expected to fail. And I was doing academically very well, and then I came and struggled. So I got a really good sense of what that is, but I also knew that if I had the right kind of support, I could really excel. And so to move forward, I made it through high school and was able to get into university and all of that kind of stuff. And the struggle was still there, but I really didn't remember who I was in terms of my my identity, my confidence, all of that until I got to university and started to really appreciate the upbringing that I had, and that I was special, So that then sort of spurred me on to realize that once I realized who I was able to kind of take that on in a different way, and I started becoming very active in community. I started sitting on boards. So I was a very young mom. I had my son at 22, and I was married at 20. Not advisable if you don't have to. And so there was struggle there too. And I ended up being someone who had to really think about what I wanted for the rest of my life, because marriage, I realized at that age was not for me. So I found my way out of it, but ended up with this incredible boy, now a man who calls me mother, which is amazing. And really had to think about what kind of life do I want for him. And when you think about the kind of life you want for your child, then it means who do I have to be to provide that kind of life for him. And who I had to be was someone who had a purpose in life, who wanted to create a better world for him. And then I realized that I wanted to create a better world not just for him, but for everyone. And I wanted to prevent him from going through the same challenges that I went through. So I found my purpose through the struggles and challenges that I had. And that purpose is about love, leadership, and community. And that's my mission statement. That's what I'm sticking to. Yeah.
Love, leadership, and
love, leadership, and community. And I created that statement decades ago. Yeah.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. It's so interesting how our kids also focus the mind in terms of the difference that we want to make in the world. Mm-hmm. And good on you for having it at 22.
I did. I stopped there though, I tell you that much.
We're going to save a little bit of time for some questions from the audience. But maybe you could talk to me a little bit about mentorship, how that's supported you in your life, if you've had important mentors, and maybe talk a little bit about what you've learned as you mentor others yourself, or from learning from your own mentorship, what's important to mentor others well.
You know, I think I was being mentored and mentoring others even before I realized that I was doing that. You know, so I think it's always important to have someone in life that you can say, she's doing what I would like to do, or he's doing what I'd like to do. You know, there's one person that I could look to today. She's a recently retired professor, Dr. Benjamin, who throughout my young adult life to today is someone that I can look to and say, she really altered the way that I look at the world. She taught me, without knowing it, I think, most of the time, she taught me how to really be able to critically analyze society and the world and the impact and who particularly as a black woman, but how my own presence actually impacts the world, right? And to be conscious of that on a regular basis, right? So because I just don't walk in the world, I walk with a lot of things, right? There are perceptions of me, and there are expectations of me. And so I've become very aware that not to take my presence lightly, you know? And that the way that I see the world is important because I have a vision of the world that I want to be in and the world that I want to create and add to and contribute to. And she taught me that we can't just be satisfied with how things are. She also taught me that the way things are, it's not necessarily the way they're supposed to be, or they didn't just happen out of circumstance or happenstance. It happened because it was created that way. You know, we have gender inequality. It's created. It's not natural. You know, it's created. All the inequities that we have in the world are taught. And so she really instilled in me a fight for that, a fight for justice, a fight for equality, a fight for recognition. And that fight in me is something that I've been able to turn into a career, you know. So I without that fight, then what's the purpose?
You really strike me, Paulette, as someone who has had an examined life from the point of view that you do everything that you do, and you're also really thinking about it kind of at that meta level of, you know, what it means, and like you say, so much of this stuff, the not so good stuff, it really is constructed. It's history, but history does not mean it needs to be the way it is. So,
right. Can I just add another part of it, because there's the mentoring piece, and so I get asked quite a bit by young women to mentor them, and I really think that it ends up with them mentoring me as well. You know, because I can't see the world through the eyes of a young woman, which I'm not anymore. And so I'm able to understand their world from a different purpose and offer advice as well as get advice. You know, because as a Kenyan Women's Foundation, we're really out to support girls and young women to become the leaders in their lives and in their community, and to build confidence and to not be afraid to take on leadership roles, and you know, in their communities. So, but what are the barriers that they're facing? So I get to understand that through their lens and through their eyes. So I take that on as much as I can in my life to be a mentor. But you know, you mentioned some of the awards that I receive, and I'm grateful for them. What it does as well, unintentionally, is that it creates a level of expectation.
your phone payment brings a lot.
Yes.
A lot of requests.
Yeah, and it's all good, but that awareness of what I carry and the fact that there are not a lot of women who look like me, not enough women in leadership roles, but not a lot of women who look like me in leadership roles across this amazing country, And so that the expectation becomes even heavier sometimes. And so I'm very conscious of that. And it means I have to take care of myself and sometimes. Yeah.
And you talked about that experience. It probably sounds like it's a lot of a good thing, maybe sometimes too much of a good thing, how much your phone or your requests come to you, but you have that experience of mentoring being reciprocal, and there is something that really has come back to you as well. Do you have any advice for the audience here around, beyond what you've already said, around both being a mentor and seeking out or experiencing mentorship?
Well, when it comes to mentoring, I think we have to determine what it is. What is it that we're looking for, and what is it that we have to give as well. I don't think mentoring has to be an age-limited thing. I don't think it's about an older woman mentoring a younger woman. I think it is a relationship that you create. And in fact, just last week I was talking to a young woman who's leading an organization of young women leaders that she created. And she is 23 years old and she's an executive director. Isn't that incredible? And so she's really looking for someone that can advise her in terms of where she goes with the organization. And what I said to her is that take some time to sit down and reflect about what are some of the things that you would like through the conversations that we can have. What can I support you, and what is it that, because maybe it's not me based on what you're looking for. Just because I'm the CEO doesn't mean that I'm the kind of CEO that you need in terms of what your needs are, right? So I want to be able to find out what are the goals that she has, and then let's have a conversation about those goals, because maybe it's me and someone else, right? So I think it's really about getting clear about what I can offer and what I can't, but also what is it that she needs that I can provide, and also being honest about what I can't provide.
That's great. So you really strike me, Paulette, as somebody who lives your life with real intentionality, and it causes me to think about, I don't often reflect. Sometimes you get so busy just doing stuff that, we are all leading in our own ways, but it really speaks to me that importance of truly reflecting on and thinking at a deeper level and being able to surface some of those ideas and questions for the people that for the young leaders that you're coming into contact with. We probably can make some time for questions from you.
There's a question back.
Thank you. Can you tell us, first of all, your name?
Oh, hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm actually part of running the satellite session. I'm also a woman of color. And my question to you is, when you find yourself in challenging situations where you feel those pressures coming down on you, say you're at a meeting with lots of people, you're being, under a lot of pressure. What do you do in those situations? What are the strategies or things that you think about to kind of help yourself be authentically yourself and stand up to that in moments that you've been challenged?
Well, I was gonna say that it's always important to be my authentic self. Because I think if you are, then the pressure eases significantly. And I think it's sometimes when we are busy trying to put forward an image or to not share who we are totally, or be who we are totally, that we can feel that pressure in ways that are unhealthy. So it's important to me to speak my truth. And I am also careful how I speak my truth so that it is not unintentionally harmful to others who need to hear it. So, if I was previously CEO of YWCA Canada, was said earlier, in that role, I held that role for almost 11 years. Loved the YWCA movement. I'll always be a YWCA woman for my whole life. I spent 25 years of my life in the YWCA. But you know, it was a movement that didn't have a lot of diversity in leadership, and I worked hard to diversify that leadership. Some successes and some not so successful results, but you know, I spent most of my years in that movement being one of 1, 2, 3 women of color all the time, you know, and so being able to always raise that in a way that others could hear it was something that I always had to do. And then advising others how they can survive that is also important. One of the things that I did with some friends is we started in Toronto the Black Women's Leadership Network, because when I was able to be among folks who got it without having to explain it, it really helped, right? So sometimes the solution is not about only about gender. You know, my life is intersectional. My existence is intersectional. I can't be black only. I'm a woman. I can't be woman only. I'm black. You know, and knowing my full identity, you know, is important. So, you know, it's about having the support. I have a great family who they're always there for me, and I have friends who treat me like me as opposed to, you know, some other image of me, and I have some colleagues who I can call on anytime to say, I just need to have dinner, you know, and talk. So those are some of the strategies that I use, and that sustains me for the next time.
Very interesting. Excuse me, we've got time for one more question. How about 2 more questions? We'll start with you and then we'll go to you.
Thank you. You alluded to the vision of society that kind of galvanized you, and you alluded to some of the aspects, but could you talk about that a bit more fully?
Well, you know, it's, I've always worked in this field. I've never worked outside of the sector. So I've always been in the not-for-profit sector. You know, I did psychology and urban studies in school because I wanted to really look at what was the impact of how we design communities for people in need, whether that be public housing, whether it be community spaces, whatever that is. What's the impact on their lives when you do that? What happens when you shove a bunch of people who don't have economic means and access into public housing and expect them to thrive? What happens to those kids? So that's kind of where I started, and then realized that if I didn't have my family, that could have been me when I left my marriage with a young boy. And so, you know, I created this vision of what it is that I want in terms of young people being able to thrive. You know, Toronto can be a tough place. You know, I love Toronto. I'm always happy when the plane's coming back into the city. I love it. It's in my heart. But it can be a tough place because of whether it be poverty or a combination of poverty and race and you know, violence and all kinds of stuff. And I've worked in some of the toughest neighborhoods in Toronto. And I know that if they had a choice, an option, an opportunity, then their lives would be different. And so if we design communities differently, and if we supported families differently, then we could actually have young people's dreams be real as opposed to one in a few, right? So I have a vision of society being just and fair, of creating public policies to acknowledge and recognize that, of the importance of accessible education, and education that is inclusive, really building a society where people know and feel that they belong. Not having young black boys say, I don't expect to live till 21. That's not okay. Having 40% of black kids fail, having indigenous young people not see a future for themselves, that's not okay. And I know as a society that we can do better. We absolutely can. So, the self-interest that we have, where we can't have a fairer tax system or invest in communities. I've been able and fortunate enough to travel right across this country. I've been to the north, I've been east and west, and it's, we are a rich country, yet we have young people in Nunavut feeling completely isolated and ignored and forgotten. I know we can do better, right? So, yeah, that's the vision that I have.
One of the tough things as moderator is keeping track of the time. So what I'm going to do is that because I promised you one question, I'm going to let you have one question.
Actually answered it beautifully. I was going to ask, but what is your current vision? What is your current expectation that you're setting now? And I think you started, you just laid it out.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, what an inspiring talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm inspired too.
Oh, thank you for coming. Yeah. So keep an eye out for this one. So, thank you again, Paulette. Take care. I'm now really excited to introduce Jessie Adcock. So, Jessie, you may know her as the City of Vancouver's Chief Technology Officer, and everything that must entail, which includes things like Internet of Things, Vancouver being a smart city, mobility, data, cloud. She previous to running everything tech and digital, IT transformation of the city, she was I think you were the country's first chief digital strategy officer for a municipality. Jessie actually hails here from Vancouver. She did her degree up at SFU. Previous to working in this field, she was with banks and telecom companies in marketing, IT, digital, developing implementation strategies, leading innovation and application development, managing direct customer channels for consumer and business markets. Basically, Jessie lives and breathes the digital world, and for some of us Luddites, we're kind of just, come along, but if you plug into the city, it's pretty amazing what the level of citizen digital access that we have, and my sense is that Jessie probably played a pretty important role in supporting and leading on that. But I did some late night Googling on Jessie last night, and I also found out that she was a federal candidate. She ran for federal office in 2015 for the district of Coquitlam, I think, Coquitlam-Port Moody. Now just think about that, running for national office and the guts and the time that it takes to do something like that. So I'm super excited to welcome Jessie to the stage. So come on up and we'll have a chance to This was curated. We were told the idea was to have a deeper discussion, so that's why we're in a smaller room. That's why it's limited attendance, and I think whoever curated this, good on you. So I'm gonna ask you the same question, Jessie, to start with that I asked Paulette. So is your life and career different than you expected? Did you have a strong vision or plan for what you wanted to do in life? Or has it been more of an unexpected journey with surprises?
A totally unexpected journey from start to finish. I think my whole life is just based on sort of survival, resilience, and taking risks. And a lot of what I ended up doing in both personal and professional life has just been a series of opportunities taken. And then each opportunity has led to another opportunity. And oftentimes the professional opportunity is a consequence of a personal, learning of some kind, which then opens up the universe to you. And so for me, both have kind of gone hand in hand. As I've kind of grown up, I've had the opportunity to kind of have a career progression that's been like sort of in tandem to that, not related necessarily, but generally me drives the career choices. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just have to ask a side question. How IT? Was it what you studied in university? Tell us a little bit.
No, it was
just the high level
very accidental actually. Like, so I graduated from university in '97. It was sort of like the end of the big .com thing. There were no really, at the time, there still wasn't like, there were computer science degrees, but really like not a lot of people took computer science, and women especially did not take computer science, like it was not an option. I had done my undergrad in joint history and, or joint major in history, French, and poli-sci, and my intention was to sort of go to law school. Anyway, long story short-ish is that I was home one summer for my sister and a best friend were getting married, and I figured, well, I'll work somewhere for the summer, and I ended up going to there was no online job postings, there was a job board with index cards at SFU. So the job board at SFU was looking for an entry level. At the time there's still no call centers. Like, even though we now take it for granted, this is 25, 26 years ago, and they were building a 4-seat call center in Coquitlam. This small company that was owned by, BCE Media, they were about to start selling these handheld satellite phones, and they wanted to build a 4-seat call center, and they needed people who spoke French. And so my mom had the, sort of acumen to put me in French immersion. I was the second graduating class in BC for full immersion, French immersion.
Wow.
And so because I spoke French, I got the job, not because I knew anything technical. And so then two things happened there. One was I ended up having an aptitude for all of it. So it started off with, okay, let's build the call center, but then it became sort of manage the inventory associated with the phones, which became like the office applications at the time, email, all of that, none of it was intimidating. And then starting to activate the phones on the satellite required like this portal, that the commands, the language, all of that, none of it seemed foreign. And I think, again, that was because I grew up speaking French at school, Punjabi with my grandparents, Hindi with like babysitters, and English with my parents. So I think like the ability to add like a fifth language dimension wasn't hard. And so that happened, and then I met my husband at work, and then that led to a whole bunch of other things, and I ended up staying in tech. Yeah.
I mean, it just, sorry for the segue, but that's an incredible story. And, I do a lot with tech. So, I chaired Nancy's digital strategy committee. I was, we had a massive digital transformation we're still undergoing at the credit union, in our own business. Tech is a huge part of succeeding in the future. Like, it really is kind of, to use a term, the ministry of everything.
Yeah, well, everything we do at the city now, it's stressful and it's 24/7. Like my team has now, worked sort of like almost every weekend this year. People don't understand that it's 24/7. I mean, when things go down, people have to come in and fix those things. So it's really interesting because I've worked both on the project side where you're building and deploying things, and now, in the city, like very operational too. So when things break, the buck stops here. So it's kind of interesting how the world's changing.
This question wasn't on my list, but, so you're a woman. And
I am.
And you're in charge of IT at the city of Vancouver.
And I'm 5'2".
And you don't have a computer science degree.
And I don't have a computer science degree.
So you've busted.
Imposter syndrome.
You've busted a lot of ceilings, walls, whatever you want to call it. What was that like? Did you notice it? Because it is unusual.
Yeah, it's very unusual.
It's a very male-dominated place, historically.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, there comes a time in your career, too, where you have to sometimes swallow your pride and follow, the boys where the decisions are being made, especially in banking, right? Like, in those cases, you are not in,
Inner sanctum.
Yeah, you have to kind of be one of the guys, too, at some stage, right? You don't just keep getting promoted, living your own truth. You have to play the game in the system at sometimes, too. So you have to, I think, have a certain amount of political acumen to shatter those ceilings, because no one's going to hand it to you, right? You're going to have to, it's a combination of your own common sense and sensibility, but B, also having the ability to abstract yourself from the situation and your personal opinions about whatever you're doing and kind of navigate a system that's been designed by men for men, whether it's communities, policies, governments, corporations, laws, all of it, has been architected by the other gender. Am I conscious of it? Definitely conscious of it, especially when I'm in situations like this, because people recognize it more than I promote it, and so it's an uncomfortable feeling sometimes to get the attention, because I'm very afraid of coming off, and this is again self-consciousness, but I don't want people to think I drink my own Kool-Aid, which I really don't. But when you're in this tricky line where people want to talk to you, I try to sometimes overcompensate, right? I also have a very, very strong sense of being the only woman, because I still am. Like, I spoke at a CIO conference last week. There's 250 people in the room, maybe 5 women. I went to a infrastructure and cloud operations event in the States over December, and probably attended by 3,000 people. Every 50th person was a woman. So I am very conscious of being, at events, at dinners, when you're being mobbed by salespeople, I control quite a bit of the purchasing.
How much money do you control?
60 million. Half of that is not, half of that is people and salary expense.
But it's
A year.
Thank you for 15 a quarter. But yeah, think about that. Jessie Adcock, 3,000 people, one in 50 are women. And not only is she the boss, it's of the city of Vancouver, which I think has one of the most progressive, forward-looking, digital IT strategies of any municipality.
Yeah, we're really on the map globally. It's funny because Vancouver has way more profile around the world than it does in Canada. Yeah, in Canada, anywhere east of us has no idea what we're doing. But you step outside and everybody knows what we're doing, so it's kind of interesting, yeah.
I'm going to go back to my one other regular question, then I'm going to open it up. You talked about some things in your life that were certain events or decisions that were pivotal in setting you on a path of leadership. It sounds like the SOU job board was a big one.
Yeah.
Call centers and liking hardware, meeting your husband. You've stayed in Coquitlam, Portland. Tell us about running for federal office in 2015 and why and how and what was that like?
It was the scariest, craziest thing I've ever done. So I have always been really interested in politics, like since probably my earliest, I can remember sort of 8, 9 years old being interested in how governments work and dictatorships versus democracies and how laws are made and all that kind of stuff. So for me, it was sort of very desensitized. Politics has never been kind of like this dirty thing to me. Politics has always been this sort of this thing that you do someday to make sure your country, like not unlike unlike our previous speaker, like this notion that you can change the world if you are involved in politics. And so I always had it in my mind that I would do it one day. I didn't know that I would do it in 2015. That was actually a perfect storm of a few events. Again, personal life, professional life colliding. So I had just started with the city. I'd been with the city about a year and a half by that point. And in